As you're well aware, Kyrie Irving is not going to be with the Brooklyn Nets this season unless he gets vaccinated, and it's looking increasingly unlikely that he will get vaccinated. And this point has been driven into the ground by every single media outlet in existence. So I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Kyrie Irving's absence as it comes from a team building standpoint and how it affects their chances in the playoffs. Because it does. Losing a talent like Kyrie Irving is an enormous deal for a team with title contention hopes. This team has gone from Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant as an offensive trio, which the offense could overcome any defensive deficiencies more than likely. But now you just have James Harden and Kevin Durant. So how does that affect their title chances? Are they now still the overwhelming favorite to come out of the East? Are they still the overwhelming favorite to win the title this year? Probably not. But they're definitely still up there, at least in my eyes. They may still be the overwhelming favorite for a lot of teams, but I think we have to give some other teams in the East their respect as well. These Nets are not the defending champions. The Milwaukee Bucks are. Now, I know a lot of people have been saying that Kevin Durant, if his foot was like 2 inches backwards, then they would have been going to the NBA Finals. And that was with James Harden on one leg and Joe Harris forgetting how to shoot. And that's true. That's very true. The Brooklyn Nets were almost in the NBA Finals last year, but they weren't. And I know that's probably not a good enough excuse or answer for some of you, but they weren't. The Milwaukee Bucks won the championship last year. And they got better, in my opinion. Now, granted, the Nets did too. The bench was bad last year. Like, there was not a whole lot of guys to go to off of the bench. Now you have guys like Patty Mills. You have Paul Millsap. You still have Blake Griffin. You have LaMarcus Aldridge now. You have James Johnson for what it's worth. DeAndre Bembry is a solid defender, but he's never really been that good. And then you have Landry Shamet, who's a shooter, kind of. His shot has kind of been weird the last few years. He doesn't really add anything outside of that, so we'll see how much playing time he gets and stuff like that. But this team is better. This team is absolutely better. And don't even let me forget Cameron Thomas, because Cameron Thomas is going to be probably the X-factor player for this Brooklyn Nets team. Because that offense that Kyrie Irving was going to provide, that scoring presence, Cameron Thomas looks like he can do something similar. He's not going to be as polarizing as Kyrie Irving, who has the best handles probably in NBA history. But he is a scorer. He is a bona fide scorer. And coming off of the bench for this Brooklyn Nets team and probably getting a lot of shots, it's going to be really good for him that Kyrie is missing. Maybe not for the Nets as a whole, but maybe if Kyrie retires, you still have Cameron Thomas. And Cameron Thomas is going to be really good. This experience is going to be really good for him. Even though he's probably going to be playing with one of Kevin Durant or James Harden at all times, he's still going to be, at the very least, the number 2 option next to those guys because of how polarizing as a scorer he is. He's been a high-level scorer in every single level of play that he's been in. And that is going to be really, really important for this Brooklyn Nets team. And who knows if one of James Harden or Kevin Durant is out, or maybe they even want to run full bench lineups for a little bit in the regular season to give them both a rest. Cameron Thomas is going to shine. I would not be surprised if I wake up one day and Cameron Thomas had 40 points in a regular season game. I would not be surprised at all. I promise you we're going to see a lot of good games from this guy, especially if he is featured as he probably should be a little bit off of the bench. So that in itself is going to put their bench over the edge, really, because then you still have guys like, the Paul Millsaps and the Blake Griffins that I was talking about, and the LaMarcus Aldridge. That's another score that they have. So how does that match up against the Bucks? Because really, I think the Bucks are going to be the main contender in the East. Unless Philly somehow gets Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal, I really don't think they're in the conversation. Because I mean, they completely crapped on themselves last year, and that was to a Hawks team who is going to be better this year. So we'll see how that goes this year if they do face off again, or if Philly faces Brooklyn or Milwaukee. We'll talk about that then. But right now, I think it's two teams in the East that have a chance of coming out realistically, like the bigger chance of coming out. So how do the Nets face off against the Bucks? The Bucks lost PJ Tucker, which I think is a big deal. I think it's a lot bigger deal than people are making. But they also added a few guys despite losing PJ Tucker, and I think one other, Bryn Forbes. They lost Bryn Forbes too. But they replaced Bryn Forbes with Grayson Allen. And I think Grayson Allen is better than Bryn Forbes. He's still a shooter, maybe not as good as Bryn Forbes, but he's also not a complete liability on defense, and that's important. They brought George Hill back, which is going to be a big deal if he can stay healthy, because while he may be way past his prime at this point. I think he's like 34, 35. He's definitely in his mid to late 30s. If he can stay healthy, he's still a lead guard who can shoot, who can maybe play a little bit of defense. He's 6'4", so we'll see what goes on there. And then you have Rodney Hood, who has really fallen off since his promising Utah Jazz days. He's not old by any means, really. So let's hope he can get back into form and stay healthy, because health has been a huge problem for him in recent years. He can be a really important scoring presence off of the bench for them. Same with Bobby Portis. Is Bobby Portis going to go hard every single night in the regular season? Maybe, maybe not. But he's still a shooting, versatile big who's going to score some points for him, and they've got him locked down semi-long term. And they still have Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, and they have a few rookies who may get some playing time, or some, first, second-year guys, third-year guys. Jordan Nwora is supposed to be a shooter. We'll see what happens with all these guys. And Semi Ojeleye, I have to mention him, I guess. I think the Nets bench is better than this. Cameron Thomas is better than any player on this Nets bench, and that's just for sure. Unless George Hill turns back the clock a little bit, unless Grayson Allen becomes some crazy three-point shooter, I think the Nets bench alone with Cameron Thomas is probably better than them. Bobby Portis is probably better than Paul Millsap or Blake Griffin, maybe even LaMarcus Aldridge. We haven't really seen him in form yet. And they still have, DiVincenzo, who's probably going to get some run time. We don't know about Rodney Hood yet, but I think the benches are really close. But the thing is, the starters. Drew Holiday, James Harden had trouble with Lou Dort. And I'm not discrediting Lou Dort at all. Lou Dort is the GOAT. But Drew Holiday is one of, if not the best guard defender in the NBA. And he's going to be matched up with Harden every single possession of every single night, probably. And if you want to put DiVincenzo next to him, that's going to be another guy that Harden is going to have to fight through. And Harden may really, really struggle. He has a track record of struggling against guys like this. So that could be an insane deal in the season. Chris Middleton is probably going to be on KD. That's not going to go well, probably. Chris Middleton is he's a good defender, but he's not going to guard KD. And I don't think they're going to put Giannis on KD either, even though maybe they should. But they still have, this Bucks team is still probably going to be one of the best defenses in the league. The question is the offense of the Brooklyn Nets enough to overcome the insane defense that is the Milwaukee Bucks? Because they stopped playing so much drop coverage last year. They started, trying out switching, and it worked a little bit. Granted, KD is still the best player in the world, probably. Maybe the second best next to Giannis, but they definitely look better, and they are going to have another year to experiment a little bit in the regular season to see really what they can do with this team. And, this Nets team, the offense is really going to have to be really good. Now, the bench offense, I think the bench minutes are really going to be a deciding factor in this. Patty Mills and Cameron Thomas is going to be hell for the defenders of the Bucks bench. So we'll see how that goes. We'll have to see how Paul Millsap looks. We'll have to see how Blake Griffin looks a year older. We'll have to see how LaMarcus Aldridge looks coming in out of retirement again. We'll just have to see how all of these guys look to see if this team can hang with the defense of the Bucks, because right now I think the Bucks are probably going to be the favorites for me coming out of the East because they did it last year and they got better. So Kyrie Irving is a huge hit to the Brooklyn Nets, but they still have a lot of offense, and there's still the buyout market. Who knows what will happen there? There's still trades. Granted, they don't really have that many assets. But for me, I think the loss of Kyrie Irving is enough to put the Bucks over the Nets for me. Because Drew Holiday now just has to focus on James Harden instead of Harden and Irving. So that's just a little bit of it. I think the Bucks are going to come out of the East this year. I think the Nets are still really, really good, and they're still going to be really, really good. But health and defense is still going to be a problem for them. We'll just have to see how some of their guys play. And if some of the veterans are bad, this team might not go as far as we think they can. So if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike. And thank you guys for watching.